This is the story of how a small human squad, dismissed as weak and primitive, outtrained and outlasted the galaxy's strongest warriors. No exosuits, no enhancements, just grit and determination. But when the ultimate challenge arrives, can they really survive? The interspecies military base on Juno's Reach was an amazing sight. Tall metal towers covered in alien symbols, huge training fields under a bright blue sky, and sleeping quarters that lit up to match the day on different planets. Here, top fighters from all over the galaxy came to train, practice, and push past the limits of their species. When the humans arrived, most of the other warriors barely hid their laughter. The humans looked simple, just under 50 soldiers wearing basic uniforms, without fancy power suits, force shields, or enhanced bodies. The other groups, Garak with 4 strong arms, Lethari with glowing muscles, and the huge Mach with metal bones, watched them from a distance, quietly mocking them as the humans set up in a corner of the training yard. Lumbering humanities among the humans. Sergeant Luke Anders stood out not because of his stature, but because of his stubborn, quiet resolve. His hair was buzzed short, his frame lean and packed with wiry muscle. He wasn't the tallest, strongest, or fastest in his unit, but he had something none of the others could see. A fire that didn't burn out, no matter how many days or miles lay ahead. The first day was an orientation, where the alien instructors demonstrated the correct way to train. They showcased mechanized suits that lifted weights a man couldn't budge alone, metabolic injectors that accelerated muscle growth, and sensory feedback combat rigs that adapted to the user's weaknesses. The alien warriors laughed at the human methods when they saw them. Push-ups in the dirt, pull-ups from a steel bar bolted to a tower, running endless laps around the field. During the afternoon assembly, the Lethari commander, whose sinewy frame shimmered with translucent blue, approached Luke's squad. "Your training methods are quaint," he said, voice echoing through a translator disc. "Would you like access to proper enhancement rigs? We wouldn't want you to injure yourselves." Luke met his gaze steadily. "No enhancements for us, we're fine with the basics." A ripple of laughter spread through the assembly. The Garak, with their 4 thick arms and chitinous skin, flexed muscles gleaming under the twin suns. The Mach bared their teeth, showing metallic incisors adapted for close-quarters combat. One Garak, named Verkar, leaned closer to Luke, his breath carrying the scent of ozone. "You humans will be crawling by the end of the week. This program isn't for soft-skinned creatures who think jogging makes them warriors." Luke said nothing, but that night, as the alien warriors retreated to their recovery chambers and enhancement pods, the human squad was on the track, running, lap after lap, hour after hour. "Sergeant, are we really doing this?" Private Mason panted, his sweat mixing with the dust of the training yard. "Yes," Luke said calmly, not breaking stride, "because when you rely on a machine, the machine owns you. Out here, it's just us and the dirt. Keep moving." By the 3rd day, the aliens had taken to spectating the humans' primitive routines as though they were some kind of entertainment. The humans began each morning with a run, 10 miles before sunrise, followed by sets of push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups. Then weightlifting, with nothing but iron plates and sheer determination. While the aliens lounged in recovery chambers, the humans drilled combat maneuvers by hand, practiced throws and holds without the aid of feedback suits. But a change was beginning to ripple through the complex. On the 5th morning, as the alien warriors prepared for their enhanced sprinting drills, they noticed the humans still running, their feet pounding the track in a relentless rhythm. Mason, who had nearly collapsed on day 1, now kept pace with the others. Sweat streamed down their faces, but their eyes were sharp, their breathing controlled. Verkar scoffed from the sidelines. "Endurance means nothing if you can't lift a Mokar beam or wield a pulse rifle." That afternoon, Luke's squad gathered near the iron racks, loading the weights by hand. The Mach, watching with amusement, began demonstrating lifts using their exosuits, effortlessly raising weights twice their own mass. Luke's unit stepped up next, no suits, no enhancements. They grunted under the strain, faces red, veins bulging, but they moved the weights. And by the end of the session, they weren't just lifting, they were outlifting. The aliens murmured uneasily. It wasn't just human strength they were witnessing. It was resolve, a raw determination that ignored fatigue and pain. And each day, the humans returned to the track, returned to the weights, returned to the floor for another set of push-ups. One evening, as the twin moons rose, the alien commander himself approached Luke. "You're pushing them beyond safe thresholds," he said. "This kind of exertion can cause muscle collapse, cardiovascular strain. Are you certain this is wise?" Luke met his gaze with quiet steel. "They'll adapt. We're built to adapt." That night, a storm rolled across the desert surrounding the complex. Thunder cracked across the sky and wind howled against the barracks. While the alien warriors huddled in shelters, Luke's squad was outside, running through the rain. Lightning flashed over soaked faces, bodies slick with mud. They climbed the slick training walls, sprinted the flooded track, lifted drenched iron until their hands bled. By the end of the second week, murmurs spread through the alien ranks. One Garak was overheard saying, "They're not breaking. They should be broken by now. How are they still running, still lifting?" In the mess hall, the human squad sat quietly, eating plain rations, while the others feasted on nutrient-rich meals. Their eyes were sharper, their postures straighter. Luke's ankle was taped from a strained tendon, but he moved without complaint, checking on each of his squad mates. "You good, Mason?" he asked. Mason wiped sweat from his forehead, wincing as he flexed sore arms. "I'm good, Sergeant. I'll be better tomorrow." The alien warriors watched them with a mixture of skepticism and growing unease. Some of the younger Lithari even attempted to join the humans on their morning run, only to fall behind halfway through. The Moked tried to match the humans in weightlifting without suits, and left with strained joints and bruised egos. By the start of the third week, it was no longer the humans who were on the defensive. The aliens, with their technological advantages, were starting to fall behind. And as Luke's squad lined up at dawn for another run, he glanced around the gathering field and said quietly, "Let's show them what resilience looks like." By the fourth week, the whispers of disbelief had grown into open conversations. Alien warriors clustered at the edges of the training grounds, watching the humans with expressions that had shifted from mockery to something closer to wary respect. The human squad wasn't just enduring, they were improving. In the pre-dawn glow, Luke Anders led his team through another grueling regimen. The ground was still slick from the previous night's rainstorm, making every step treacherous. Yet the humans didn't falter. They ran in unison, their footfalls syncopated like the beat of a war drum. Luke's breath steamed in the chill air as he shouted encouragements. "Keep the pace. We're not stopping because the ground's wet. We adapt. We move." Private Mason stumbled slightly but caught himself. His shirt clung to his skin, drenched in sweat. He wasn't the only one struggling. Each soldier bore the marks of relentless training. Bruises, taped joints, sweat-slick skin. Yet none of them quit. Watching from the sidelines, Verkar's usual smugness was replaced with unease. His own squad had tried to replicate the humans' unaided runs and lifting sessions, but without enhancements, most had failed. 2 Lithari warriors had collapsed from sheer exhaustion during a 20-mile endurance drill, and even the Mach were starting to complain of muscle fatigue. By midday, the human squad moved to the weight pits, where they hoisted iron under the twin suns. The air shimmered with heat, but Luke's team worked in disciplined silence. Their hands were wrapped in rough cloth to protect against cuts and blisters, yet blood still dotted the bars. A low grunt escaped Luke as he heaved a barbell loaded with weights beyond what any of the Mach dared attempt without exosuits. A hush fell over the crowd as the bar cleared Luke's chest. He locked it out, then slowly lowered it back onto the rack. His arms trembled, but his gaze was steady. From the back of the gathering, a voice called out, laced with equal parts frustration and disbelief. "Why keep pushing? When there's tech that can make it easy, why suffer? Luke glanced over, his voice even. Because when the tech fails, when the suits break, when the enhancements run dry, this is what's left. Strength you earned, not strength you borrowed. That evening, as the alien squads retreated to their nutrient baths and stim recovery chambers, the humans continued training. Mason, exhausted but determined, pounded his fists into a padded combat dummy. Next to him, Corporal Rios practiced grappling drills with a fellow soldier, each movement precise and controlled despite their battered bodies. Luke sat nearby, his ankle still wrapped tightly, tending to a strained shoulder. He watched his squad with a quiet pride. They weren't just surviving, they were learning to push past limits, to understand their bodies and minds in ways no enhancement chamber could teach. "Sergeant," Mason said between labored breaths, "they're watching us, every day." Luke nodded. "Good, let them. When it counts, they'll know who can keep moving." The next day, an unexpected challenge arrived. The alien commanders, perhaps seeking to reassert their authority, announced a full-course obstacle challenge, a grueling trial designed to test endurance, strength, and tactical coordination. The course sprawled across miles of rugged terrain, peppered with high walls, weighted sleds, deep water pits, and simulated combat scenarios. "We'll see how long your humans last," one Lithari commander muttered to his counterpart as the squads assembled at dawn. Luke's squad stood at attention, every member showing signs of wear, taped wrists, bruised arms, sunburnt necks, but their eyes were clear, focused. When the signal flare arced into the sky, chaos erupted. Alien squads surged forward, their augmented limbs and bio-enhancements propelling them through the early stages of the course. The Mach tore through weighted sleds with exosuited strength, the Lithari flowed over water pits with bioplasmic grace, and the Garak bounded up walls with unnatural agility. The humans? They were last off the starting line, their initial pace methodical rather than explosive. Luke's voice cut through the shouts and splashes. "Hold formation, focus on breathing, one obstacle at a time." The aliens' initial lead was undeniable, but as the course dragged on, the tide shifted. The enhanced warriors began to slow. Their augmentations, tuned for bursts of energy, weren't built for sustained exertion. Joints stiffened, biofeedback loops overloaded, and muscles cramped. One by one, they faltered. Meanwhile, the human squad found their rhythm. Mason's strained legs churned through the mud, Rios powered through the weighted sled with sheer determination, and Luke scaled the walls with steady precision, his taped ankle bending just enough to propel him upward. They didn't pause for breath, didn't wait for recovery. They kept moving, their pace unwavering. By the final leg of the course, a steep incline with loose gravel and heavy logs to shoulder, the humans had overtaken half the alien squads. Verkar, chest heaving, glanced sideways as Luke's squad passed him. His forearms trembled with strain, his breaths ragged. "How?" he gasped. Luke didn't slow. "Because we don't stop," he said, each word punctuated by the rhythmic pounding of his boots on the incline. That's how. The humans reached the finish line, not first, but ahead of more than half the alien teams, including those who had laughed loudest at their primitive training methods. As they collapsed in the dust, their bodies slick with sweat and streaked with mud, the silence from the gathered warriors was deafening. For the first time since they'd arrived, the aliens didn't laugh. In the days following the obstacle course, the alien compound was different. The smugness in the air had thinned, replaced by a quiet undercurrent of curiosity and, for the first time, respect. Whispers passed through the ranks. The humans had finished ahead of seasoned, technologically superior teams. The Lithari commander, once dismissive, now watched the human squad with narrowed eyes during training sessions. Verkar of the Garak had ceased his taunts, though he maintained his distance, his forearms crossed as he observed their morning routines. Even the Mach, once dismissive of human muscle, now lingered near the weight pits, comparing lift techniques and noting the humans' steady progress. Luke noticed the shift but didn't comment. The squad had doubled down on their regimen. While the other species recovered in chambers and relied on medical tech, the humans recovered the hard way. Ice baths improvised from storage crates, stretching routines led by Luke himself, meticulous hydration, and careful rationing of protein. Mason's bruises had darkened to deep purples, but his running form had smoothed. Rio's hands, though calloused and blistered, gripped the bars with unwavering determination. One evening, after an exhausting training circuit, Luke found himself seated beside a small fire in the far corner of the compound. Across from him sat Verkar, silent for a long moment before finally speaking. "You don't stop," Verkar rumbled, his tone less mocking than before. "Why?" Luke glanced at him, his expression neutral. "Because the moment you stop, you lose, not just here, anywhere." Verkar's eyes gleamed faintly in the firelight. "But your bodies aren't designed for this. No suits, no enhancements. You should be broken." Luke shrugged, shifting to stretch his stiff ankle. "We're built for something different, for pushing past what we think is possible. When your body says stop, your mind says keep going. And that's where strength lives. Not in muscle, not in tech, in here." He tapped his temple lightly. For a moment, Verkar said nothing. Then, with a gruff nod, he stood and left. The next morning, something strange happened. As the humans gathered for their usual pre-dawn run, a small group of Lithari and even a couple of Moke joined them at the track. They didn't speak, but as Luke's squad began jogging, the aliens followed. Their enhanced limbs and tech-assisted joints struggled at first to match the humans' rhythm, but gradually they found a pace. By the 5th mile, the lines between species had blurred into a single, steady flow of determination. That afternoon, Luke's squad was summoned to the central arena, a vast coliseum ringed with observation platforms where high-ranking commanders from across the sectors convened. The humans stood in formation, their uniforms sweat-streaked but immaculate, their eyes forward. The Lithari commander addressed them, voice booming through the arena. "Sergeant Anders and your squad, we did not expect your species to endure, much less excel. Yet here you stand, stronger and more disciplined than when you arrived. We cannot ignore this." Luke nodded once. "We didn't come to impress, we came to train." A ripple of low murmurs spread through the audience. The commander continued, "In recognition of your performance, we are extending an invitation to participate in the final trials against the best of our combined forces, not as a formality, but as equals." The human squad exchanged glances. Luke's gaze sharpened. "We accept." That evening, in the barracks, the air was thick with tension and anticipation. The final trials weren't just symbolic. They were a crucible, a grueling gauntlet of endurance, strength, and strategy, designed to push even the most enhanced warriors to their limits. Luke gathered his squad. "This is what we trained for," he said quietly. "Not for them, not for the medals or the recognition, but to prove to ourselves what we're capable of. No exosuits, no enhancements, just us, our training, and our grit." Mason, his face flushed from the day's exertions, grinned. "Let's show them what human stubbornness really looks like." The squad trained harder than ever that night, pushing through exhaustion. They practiced grappling on the mats, drilled weighted carries until their legs shook, and sprinted intervals on the track in the glow of distant stars. Alien warriors stopped to watch, many with quiet admiration, some joining the drills to match pace, others simply absorbing the quiet determination that radiated from the human. By dawn, as the suns crested the horizon, the final trials awaited. The entire compound gathered in the central arena, the stands filled with warriors from every species present. The arena floor had been transformed into a labyrinth of obstacles, weighted challenges, combat stations, and endurance tracks. Luke's squad stood ready, their bodies humming with fatigue but minds sharpened with focus. The other teams, alien warriors gleaming with bio-enhancements and tech, stared at them with a mix of disbelief and cautious respect. The starting horn blared, and they ran. The starting horn echoed across the arena, and the crowd roared. Luke's squad launched forward, legs pumping hard against the packed dirt of the starting lane. The other alien team surged ahead with blinding speed, enhanced limbs propelling them over the first obstacles with inhuman grace. The humans, without the benefit of technology, trailed behind initially, their pace measured and unrelenting. Mason breathed through his nose, fists clenched, focusing on each footfall. "Steady," Luke's voice came, calm amid the chaos. "They'll burn out. We'll catch up." The first challenge was a weighted sled drag across a gravel pit. Mock warriors, clad in skeletal support frames, yanked sleds forward with ease. Lithari used their bioplasmic limbs to extend reach and leverage. The humans grunted, muscles straining, feet digging deep into the grit. Luke's hands bled from the rope's bite, but he didn't let go. Inch by inch, they moved the sled forward. When they reached the marker, they weren't first, but they weren't last. They caught their breath only as long as it took to shift to the next challenge, a high wall topped with slick shifting panels. The aliens climbed using magnetic grips and flexible appendages. The humans used teamwork, one boosting another, forming a human ladder. Luke braced himself low, wincing as Rios climbed over him and reached down to haul Mason up. The squad cleared the wall as a unit, their breaths ragged but determination unwavering. The endurance track was next, a 4-mile loop through uneven terrain, punctuated by sand pits, weighted carries, and a simulated combat gauntlet. Here the alien squads began to falter. Their bio-enhancements, tuned for explosive power, couldn't compensate for the sheer attrition. Joints stiffened, metabolic stimulants faded, muscles overloaded. Luke's squad hit their stride. They didn't sprint. They ground forward with relentless consistency. Every mile etched deeper lines of fatigue into their faces, but their movements stayed smooth. Mason dropped his shoulders and powered through the sand pit. Rios carried the weighted pack as if it were part of him, and Luke, his injured ankle wrapped tight, kept the pace, each breath measured and precise. Near the end of the track, a Moke warrior stumbled, falling heavily. His squad mates hesitated. Luke veered over without hesitation. "Up," he said, extending his hand. The Mock hesitated, then clasped it. Luke grunted as he helped pull the larger alien to his feet. They both continued forward, side by side. The final stage loomed ahead, a combat challenge where the teams faced off in mixed species pairs. Here, the humans had no enhancements, no reactive armor, no force-assisted strikes. But they had technique and resilience. Luke paired with Rios against a Lithari and a Garak. The Lithari's strikes were fast but predictable, and Luke countered with precision, ducking low and using the alien's own momentum to throw him off balance. Rios grappled with the Garak, absorbing heavy hits but driving forward with sheer will, forcing his opponent back. When the horn sounded to mark the end of the trial, the arena erupted into a storm of noise. Luke's squad stood in the center, shoulders heaving, faces streaked with sweat and dust. Around them, alien warriors rose to their feet, many clapping, some nodding in genuine respect. The Mohawk Luke had helped during the race approached him quietly, nodding once, before stepping back into his group. The Lithari commander entered the arena, his shimmering form casting an ethereal glow. He raised a hand for silence. "Sergeant Luke Anders and your squad," he said, voice amplified by the arena's comm system. "You were mocked, you were doubted, yet you demonstrated not only endurance and strength, but a resilience that surpassed expectation. You didn't just run the race or lift the weight. You proved the worth of discipline and determination." Luke's squad stood straighter, their eyes locked on the commander. "You have earned not just respect, but the acknowledgement of this entire assembly," the commander continued. "Your methods were simple, but your results were undeniable. Today, you did not just participate in this program, you redefined it." A ripple of applause followed, growing into a wave of stomping and cheering. The human squad remained quiet amid the uproar, exchanging glances of quiet pride. Mason wiped a sleeve across his face, his grin boyish and wide. Rios, breath still heavy, clapped Luke on the back. As the arena emptied and the crowds dispersed, Luke gathered his team near the edge of the field. His voice was low, steady. We didn't come here to show off. We didn't come here to prove we were better. We came to get stronger, and we did. Mason nodded, still catching his breath. Stronger than we thought possible. Luke allowed himself a faint smile. Exactly. And when we leave this place, remember, it wasn't the machines or the tech that made us strong. It was this. He tapped his temple. And this, he clenched his fist. The squad dispersed, some to the mess hall, others to cool down with stretches and quiet conversation. Luke lingered a moment longer, glancing over the arena where the trials had played out. The field was quiet now, the dust settling. The echoes of their footsteps faded into memory. As he turned to leave, a group of younger alien recruits, Garak, Lithari, and even Moke, approached hesitantly. One, a Garak barely half Verkar's size, cleared his throat. "Sergeant, would you teach us the way you trained?" Luke's eyebrows rose. He studied their eager, uncertain faces and felt a slow warmth spread through his chest. "Sure," he said simply. "We'll start tomorrow morning. No suits, just sweat." The recruits nodded, their eyes alight with determination. As they dispersed, Luke followed his squad toward the barracks, his ankle aching but his stride steady. For the first time since they'd arrived, the compound no longer felt divided by species or technology. It felt like a place where anyone, regardless of origin, could learn the value of resilience, of discipline, of strength earned rather than given. And in that quiet closing moment, Luke knew they hadn't just completed the program, they'd changed it.